My name's Laura Spindler, and I have Hoof and Fang Spanish Mastiffs. So I guess initially my husband actually discovered the breed. He was reading an article in a local magazine, and the breeder was only an hour away, so I contacted her because we thought the dogs just were awesome. And I kind of did a little bit of research. What I found was there's almost nothing, well, especially back then, there was literally nothing in English about the Spanish Mastiff that you could read about. And I don't speak Spanish, really, just like a few words. So it was really difficult. So we went out, saw her and her dogs. She had actually quite a few different LGD breeds. But there wasn't really a lot of livestock. I think she just had like 2 old ewes there. But the dogs, I mean, it was just, they were really awesome. I mean, just super chill dogs. They just, some of them were a little aloof and didn't want to come up to you. Some of them were friendly, but they all had this really cool just thing. They were interested in their sheep, even though there were only 2 of them. They kept an eye on them and stuff, and they were just, I just really, liked the breed. So we did bring our first 2 puppies home from that breeder. Actually really healthy overall. However, they do have huge joint problems because of their size. So I'm kind of trying to breed down a little bit in size, or at least in weight. Which actually I'm learning it's not so much the breeding as it is keeping weight off of them. They tend to, to be able to carry a lot of weight and still move around. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can engage successfully with an apex predator if they need to, however, without running out of air or being knocked down. So my goal is kind of then, right at this point, I'm trying to breed dogs with good joints, and to maintain the regular overall health. They seem to live a little longer than most giant breeds. My male's grandfather, he is 15 this year. I haven't talked to the breeder since he turned 15, but when I talked to her last year, he was actually still going out to work with them. She said, he spent a lot of his time in the truck, but, he was still going out and, hanging out with the flocks and stuff. So that's pretty cool. So I am really a pit bull lover, and I had a couple. And when I was growing up, my mom actually, she bred and exhibited Dobermans. So I grew up with a lot of Dobies. Very cool dogs. Some of them are really intelligent. Some of them are just total boneheads. I haven't had any contact with the breed in years now, so I'm not really sure what's going on with them. But yeah, mostly I'm a huge fan of pitties. I love them. Don't have any right now, but I actually have considered getting one for a house dog because I just love them and I miss them. I mean, I've always just been an animal lover. When I was a kid, I pretty much hung out with animals, and I really liked the dogs, and have always just kind of been a dog person. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life, probably since I was about 3, that I haven't had a dog with me, at least one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just kind of always. Really what started me with breeding this particular breed were the health issues. At the time when I got my first 2, there were only 2 breeders in the U.S. One near me, and then another one in the Midwest. And they had basically this total blood feud going on, so you kind of had to pick sides, or neither one of them would talk to you. What I noticed, like I said, was, just the joint issues, and how I don't understand how you can expect a dog with joint issues to actually protect its flock, effectively. Plus, it really kind of sucks to see your 2-year-old dog struggling to get up because she's got hip dysplasia. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where it came from. I really, really felt the breed deserved better than what they were getting. So I started importing. I imported my first male, and I did some research on some of the shepherds in Spain, and settled on one that actually that I actually had, been following for a while, and contacted them, and they sent me Cabo, and he's my 5-year-old male, and he was just kind of he was just a little different than a lot of the puppies you see now. He was really lanky and leggy, and just a very tall dog. I think he's topped out at almost 38 inches at the shoulders. He's an incredibly tall dog. Very athletic. He actually is the only male in the U.S. that OFA'd excellent. So, that was awesome. However, I then imported, oh my gosh, let's see, I want to say half a dozen other dogs. Not one could pass. All of them had, they had moderate to severe hips. So I kind of realized that importing is not really the answer, even though that's kind of a big trend with this breed right now. Everybody's importing dogs. You don't get better joints by doing that. What happened is, for one thing, in Europe and pretty much everywhere else but the U.S., they are much easier when they grade hips. So while you can get a dog that's maybe graded A through FCI, OFA is going to grade the moderate, maybe, or fair, if you're lucky, good. It just all depends. They just don't have the same criteria that we do here in the U.S. So really hard to get really good hips. I talked to my vet and some other breeders and stuff of other breeds, and the general consensus is I had one choice. I could either cross with a breed that didn't have hip issues, or I could, just continue to breed up, and just breed the 30% at the top of, my ratings. So that's what I've been doing. It seems to be working. I just had my litter from last year. We've done 3 puppies so far. One, I haven't gotten her results yet, but we expect her prelims to be good, or to be excellent or good, at least good. The other one, she's probably going to be, she's not quite as good, but I'm happy with her. And then the third puppy, one of my buyers has already had her x-rayed, and she looks good. So I'm really happy with the results so far. So that's the downside to Spanish Mastiffs, is getting decent joints, and it's really important. We're kind of like, I can see, the trend here, because you get people who really, really like those big, heavy dogs with all those wrinkles. But again, at what cost? It's like, that's great. They really are cute, and they have those really nice plushy coats, but can they actually do their job? So, it would be nice if we could get a happy medium in there somewhere, but genetics just don't work that way that fast. So, I'm actually a little more focused on, on like the here and now. I'm one of those people, and so like I said, my focus right now is just to get some healthy working dogs out there that, that actually can do the job that they're bred to do.
Can you talk about the history of the breed?
I can. There's not a lot. The general consensus, it was actually kind of funny, because I had a feeling you would ask me this question, so I actually did more research than I've ever done. And basically, they're a mollusser breed that came, that they think were brought over by the Greeks and Phoenicians, over 2,000 years ago to Europe. But after that, it gets kind of, it's like everybody has an opinion. You can go to all different sites and everybody will tell you something different. My best guess is, as we know, they're a mollusser breed. They were introduced to Europe probably initially as war dogs, and then evolved into a flock guardian used by shepherds, to move and guard their sheep. But honestly, it's like, as much as I have been interested in the history, again, I can't translate all that Spanish. And when you do, I've tried, it's like everybody has differing opinions. So, they were a Mastiff that came over at the same time I think the rest of the Mastiffs did. And personally, my opinion is, well, people took them and used them for whatever they needed to use them for, and that's how they evolved. Mm-hmm. So the biggest registry, for Spanish Mastiffs, of course, is in Europe. It's FCI. If they come to the United States, I believe you have to register them. And I'm drawing a blank here. In Puerto Rico, I think it is. Mm-hmm. In order to get them registered. I didn't go that route. What I've done is, because FCI is accepted by UKC, my dogs are UKC registered. And it's very easy to do if you want to take the time and do it. AKC doesn't yet fully recognize them. They're considered foundation stock right now. Mm-hmm. So, I've talked to some people about a breed club and stuff. Not really sure where that's going to go. Honestly, I'm not one of those people that's really good at writing, rules and regulations and stuff. So I'm hoping somebody will step up and want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I'd be happy to go along with it. I just don't, I don't have the time and I don't have the inclination, to be honest with you. Right. It's like I'm kind of a reluctant breeder, to be perfectly honest with you. I started this whole thing because I just felt like the dogs deserved better. And so I'm doing it, and I love raising puppies. I love working with the dogs. I love all that. The rest of it, it's not my favorite thing. I'll leave it at that. I watched my mom go through all the politics with Dobermans and stuff, and just the whole show world, and it was just not at all my focus or my interest in any way. It's just, it has nothing to do with the dogs as far as I'm concerned. So, the dogs really don't care.
Could you talk about the FCI and the UKC standards? Is there a difference?
No, there is not. They're actually, it looks to me like UKC is pretty much just adopted FCI standards. Mm-hmm. So, depending on which way, do you want to know specifics, like height, weight requirements?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
okay.
all the above.
So anything above 30 inches and above is standard. They don't have a height maximum. Nor do they have a weight, a maximum weight, just, that they need to be over 30 inches. They're not exactly a square dog. They're a little longer than they are, their bodies should be a little longer than they are tall. One of the biggest things I've noticed right now that people aren't keeping with the standard is kind of the head shapes that I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. Spanish Mastiff's not really supposed to have much of a stop. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing these dogs with these like bowling ball heads that have these huge, indents, between their brows and their muzzles. And it's like, no, that's not really the standard if you read it. But it seems to be very popular, I guess, because it's cute. I'm not sure what the deal is. They are supposed to have excess skin. That's for protection, if they have to engage with a predator. But not so much that, it's going over their eyes and they can't see, which is another thing I'm seeing a lot of. And again, a standard is always up for, interpretation. So, everybody can interpret it the way they want. Right now, what we're seeing is a lot of people want these 240-pound dogs that, have all this wrinkle and skin. But again, I always go back to, how does that translate when the dog has to actually guard something? Mm-hmm. And may have to engage with, I've got dogs in Northern California that are guarding their flocks against mountain lions and bears right now. I had one young female went to a woman in Northern California. Well, she left her alone with a flock of sheep overnight. When she got there the next day, this was an 11-month-old puppy. She had backed the whole flock into a corner, and they couldn't figure out why. Well, then they found a dead lamb that a mountain lion had gotten a hold of. So she managed to hold the mountain lion off from the rest of the flock, but she did lose a lamb. But I mean, this is an 11-month-old puppy. She shouldn't have, she kind of shouldn't have been out there in the first place on her own. So they can do their job. They can do it really well. But they do need more than one, when you're in that kind of situation. So I see a lot of variants in tails. They're actually supposed to be long and just kind of have that curl at the bottom. It's kind of aesthetically speaking, I like it better. Some of them have more, tend to even carry them over their back. Some of mine actually even do that. But it's not the biggest issue for me right now. Like I said, joint issues. I do DNA testing, cardiac, thyroid, kidney function, and liver function tests on all my dogs before I breed them, just to make sure. So, I am trying to produce a healthy dog that can do its job is pretty much my goal right now. I'm not really interested in color. Lots of people are, especially, when people call me, well, do you have any brindles? No, I don't even have those genetics right now. I have sables and fawns and some blacks, and, that's pretty much it right now. So I did have a black and tan female that I had imported from Spain. I just had her hips x-rayed 2 weeks ago. I went ahead and had her spayed while she was on the table because there was no way in hell she was passing. And then I had my 2 yearling girls x-rayed last week, and they did very well. So we'll just have to wait and see. In my mind, there isn't a difference, simply because my goal is to breed a dog athletic enough, again, to do its job. So, in other words, if I've got one dog out there that, he's knocked over easily when they're playing and horsing around and stuff, you want balance in a dog. So I want them to be able to have enough air, and be athletic enough to have some stamina. That's another reason that I don't care for those more blocky heads, because, they just, as far as I'm concerned, they don't have the ability, to take in air the same way. Of course I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. So what I'm looking for is a very large dog. I'd like to maintain the height, and an actual, weight that's reasonable. My male that's 38 inches, he sometimes hits 200 pounds. For the most part, he hangs around at about 196. That's a very lean for a dog that height, and size. And he's also very substantial, bone-wise and stuff. And his puppies he throws seem to maintain that height, and that substance of bone. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that can, literally, take a beating if they have to and still come out on top. Okay, so I've got some that are some females that are about 34 inches. Their weight is usually about 155. The females do tend to be a little stockier than the males, in my experience. Now, I've not necessarily seen that in the show ring and stuff, but in my experience, my girls tend to keep weight on a little bit easier. But while we're talking about the standard, also there's also personality traits and stuff that you need to breed for. So while I don't mind if the dogs are a little bit aloof, like when people come that they don't know or whatever, I don't expect them to come up and be super friendly or anything. I can't have them attacking people either. So, you kind of have to watch temperament. These dogs are meant to, if you see the way they keep them in Europe, the shepherds and their families, they move the flocks together. It's called transhumance, and they basically move from one pasture to another or to market or whatever. And it's basically camping out with their dogs, and the kids and everything. And so these dogs live with them. They don't get closed into pens like they do here in the U.S. People they want to bring their 10-week-old puppy home and shove it into a pen next to a bunch of livestock. And in their mind, it's bonding to the livestock instead of them. Well, no, that's not the way they were ever meant to be used as far as what I'm seeing in Spain. The dogs are part of the family, and they do their job very well, and can manage to maintain relationships with a human and stuff too. So, it's like I want my dogs to be, to have, decent, what would you call it, threat assessment abilities. So, they know the difference. For instance, I have a school bus that stops out in front. After about 3 or 4 days of the school bus stopping out in front and the kids walking to school, my dogs don't bark at them anymore because they realize, oh yeah, that's right. These, they belong here. However, if the tweaker a half mile down the road comes by, the dogs will hit the fence trying to get at them, so that's what I want. I want them to understand the difference between a threat and, something that's not a threat. The neighbors' chihuahuas get out across the road. They have these this little pack of piranhas. They're like little long-haired chihuahuas. And they get out and they run the fence line with my dogs. I don't think my dogs would ever hurt them. They think they're adorable because they're not a threat. About a half a mile down the road, there's a couple of German Shepherds. When they get out, the dogs will not allow them to approach the property. So that's what I mean by threat assessment. These dogs have really well-developed sense of that, and we need to preserve that, not just turn them into barking maniacs over everything that, happens to come by. That's really important to me. Another thing they do is they tend to really stick around. They don't leave their livestock. And one of the ways that was illustrated to me best is one of my males can scale an 8-foot fence to get to a female in heat. I have like 4.5-foot fencing, crappy field fencing around my property. He could hop that anytime he wanted. He has never done it, never, with the exception of once. And I had a ewe lamb get out. She went under the fence, and she was screaming and running back and forth. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so much fun to catch her and get her back to her mother. So I went over to the gate to go out. Well, as I'm doing that, Cabo hops the fence and goes over and kind of, nuzzles the lamb a little bit. And he turns around and starts walking away, and she follows him all the way to the gate. And it was like awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to preserve those characteristics in my dogs. It's really important to me that they don't lose that. So I have both. I have dogs that have gone to larger properties, like I said, up in Northern California and stuff. I also have, the smaller kind of like homesteading farmers that have just a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. I guess my ideal is someone who actually work with the dog the way they were meant to be worked with. That's basically my goal. That's my ideal customer, to be honest with you, because they don't, you just, if you're willing to put in the time with the dog and actually, do that and actually form a relationship with them, a bond, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. The dogs do, their instinct kicks in. They will guard your livestock. They will guard your property. I just need people to understand that, it's not a dog that you just throw out there into a pen and then later turn out into a field, because what you're going to get is a feral dog that won't let you touch it at some, as it grows up. So, that's that. I guess that would be my ideal, is someone that actually is willing to do the work with the dogs. Mm-hmm. So right now, as it stands, approximately 98% of my applicants articulate the desire to breed their dog. The misconception is that you're going to actually make money breeding these dogs, because you're not. Not unless you're asking $10,000 a puppy or something, because quite honestly, if you're doing the health testing, if you're feeding them properly, and I'm talking in terms of time, not just dollar signs, mm-hmm. If you're putting in the time and everything, I have never, ever been in the black with my dog. As a matter of fact, drastically the opposite. So, I mean, they're big dogs, which means big vet bills, which means big feed bills. And so, and then there's DNA testing. There's just all of this. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not willing to, improve the breed. So don't do it. I guess that would be the biggest misconception, is that you're going to actually make money breeding dogs, and you're not if you do it right. It's pretty difficult. Maybe someday, but not now. So normally I say LGDs overall don't make great therapy dogs. However, because these dogs are super, super intuitive and like really in tune with their people, I've got one. Let's see, I think she's 3 years old now, that belongs to a lady in Oregon. She actually went from guarding her goats to voluntarily becoming this woman's stability dog when she has, I think it's RA, and it's kind of pretty advanced from what I understand. And that dog has actually just stepped up to the plate and, stays with her consistently all the time and, provides stability for her. I have another one right now. We'll see how this works out. He went to a family in Utah. They take at-risk children on hikes and camping trips, things like that. And he has gone there to kind of be an ambassador for the kids and kind of guard them, because there are predators and stuff out there, but also just to kind of interact with the kids and kind of, put them at ease and stuff. He's pretty much still a baby, but apparently, according to the guy I talked to him last week, he's doing a really fabulous job. They're very happy with him. So they actually can do other things. I'd like to explore that a little bit more. Just because I've seen it with my own dogs. I had to have surgery, and I had a horse go over backwards on me, and I had to have both hips replaced. That was awesome. Wow. And you know what? The first time I went, I'll never forget. I had two dogs on either side of me, just walking really slow, being really careful not to touch me. They really wanted to see me and stuff, but they were just so careful. So I thought that was pretty awesome. I think that they could actually do other things. And as I said, I would love to see them. I would love to see them work in those capacities. Some do. I have some that actually have gone to families, that are more in like the suburbs and stuff. And that's exactly what they do. I have one, she's in California. She belongs to a family. She has already, when they had the fires in Corona, she kind of detained what they think was a looter. It was a guy, and the whole neighborhood had been evacuated, except for some law enforcement, that was there. And she happens to be the wife of a law enforcement officer, and the dog took off running after this guy that shouldn't have been there, and actually kept him up against a wall until they could come and get him, I guess. I guess her husband followed the dog. She's also, there was another time that they had a guy, it was a neighbor that had gotten drunk and was coming to the wrong house, was trying to get into the wrong house. Yeah, that was interesting. She alerted everybody and wouldn't let him through the door. So, yeah, I think they can do it. My husband works 12-hour shifts at night, and I don't ever worry about anybody getting in here. I don't even lock my doors most of the time. So, I have a couple who, as a matter of fact, the one female that I actually just had spayed with last week, which broke my heart because she was gorgeous, and my UPS man won't even try to tie. As a matter of fact, I came home from town, and UPS had been there, and I saw dog treats all over the driveway. Huh. She wouldn't even eat the dog treats. I mean, he said, "I'm terrified of your dog." He called and basically said, "So I'll meet you in town with your packages." And another time I had one of my males, was a male from Russia. We were out walking, and I had a guy come up, and he got a little too close. He was just, he was kind of creepy, and got a little too close and put his hand out like he was going to, I don't think Ymir knew what he was going to do, and he just kind of grabbed his hand and held on to him. So I think they're pretty capable of detaining a human if they need to. I don't think all of them would do that. I've seen some that, if someone will come to the gate, they'll run over to the sheep and guard them. So it just kind of depends on, I think it depends on the individual dog. They're not all aggressive enough to actually, to actually do that, but some will. And I think, with training, maybe some of the others might, this is something where it's actually a whole area that I'm totally unfamiliar with. I know that dogs, who are trained to actually be guard dogs for humans, that's a really specialized training, which I don't have time to do. I don't really know the temperament they're looking for. I'm assuming they have to be a pretty confident dog. So whether or not they could be trained to do that is something entirely different. I have, like I said, at least 2 here that I know of that will do it on their own, but I'm not necessarily there. Don't know if they're necessarily doing it the proper way, so to speak, I guess. The males tend to be a little more laid back as a rule. So my females are always the ones that are, at the fence first. The males tend to stay back more with the sheep. However, when something actually shows up, we have had a couple of mountain lions come through. They're right there. They just kind of they let the females handle it, until something that actually is a danger shows up, and then they kind of remind me of lions. They'll get up, and if there's a real danger that they think the females can't handle, then they'll go ahead and show up for it. Otherwise, they're, like I said, they're pretty laid back guys. They just are. The girls are the ones that are, the ones that hit the fence line first. Mm-hmm. Really, and again, this is one of the reasons I love this breed. So far, I haven't seen a lot. I haven't had any, any health issues with, and I do have some older dogs now, and they're doing great. I've got an 8-year-old female out there that she's supposed to be dysplastic in one hip. You look at the X-rays; she's obviously dysplastic in one hip. Yet she's out there running back and forth, guarding with the rest of the dog. I fell in love with these guys, and it's basically because they're just really easy dogs. They can be a little hard-headed if you're trying to obedience train them because, it kind of goes back to their breeding, and they sometimes feel that they know better than you. So recall can kind of suck sometimes if they decide there's a threat and, you don't feel, you're trying to call them back from it. They don't always respond as quickly as I would like them to. Sometimes they don't respond at all. So there's that. They can be hard-headed. I did actually have a couple call me, and they wanted to know if the puppies chew. And as far as I know, all puppies chew. But yes, these are huge puppies, and they can do a lot of damage. Like you'll be replacing furniture if you don't... if they're in the house with you and you're not giving them alternative things to chew on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, they're big dogs. They can do a lot of damage. They can, they will kill your garden within an hour. Things like that. So, you kind of have to be ready, to either contain them so that they are better to contain the garden, I guess, things like that. But, really, like I said, they're pretty cool dogs. They just, they're easy to live with. There's been times when I've had 4 or 5 in the house at a time and not a problem other than hair, if they're, of course they shed. So, you have to vacuum every day of your life if you want to have your dog in the house. Of all the LGD breeds, I haven't had that many. I've had some peers. I've had some Pyrenean Mastiffs. I've had some crosses. these are by far my favorite. So I have not owned a lot of Pyrenean Mastiffs. I have 2 here now that are older. My biggest problem with the Pyrenean Mastiff was that the 2 I had anyways, they were so willing to jump and fight at anything. Whereas the Spanish Mastiffs, they tend to not. My biggest fights have been between males when there's a female in heat. And that's because, if I was dumb enough not to separate them, during that time. But the Spanish Mastiff seems to live together a little easier than the Pyrenean. And then, of course, the other thing, I think Pyrenean Mastiffs are gorgeous. They're beautiful dogs. However, I am never in a million years going to want to maintain all those coats out in this mud and dirt and underbrush and stuff that we have out here. No way. So yeah, that would to me would be that was one of the things. The 2 I've got, it's just a couple times a year. You can build 3 or 4 different dogs with their coats that you've brushed out of them. So
you would say slightly more dog
aggressive, hotter tempered,
and civil aggressive too.
It's kind of they just seem a little angrier to me. Just a little easier to piss off than the Spanish.
What part of the world today do you think is breeding the best Spanish Mastiffs?
So I'm going to have to say probably here because our testing is more rigorous. The problem is we need to get more breeders doing health testing and being transparent about their health testing. So, in other words, you can't just have one dog and say, "Oh, this dog OFA'd really good," and then breeder or him to another one that hasn't been tested, and say, "Well, because that dog's not old enough yet," or because whatever, and continually do those kind of things. You can't, and so that's what we have going on because, again, it's a huge chunk of money to have these dogs tested and get them ready to breed. So. There are a lot of people coming up. I mean, there's a ton of people that are importing from the Czech Republic. Actually, Lenka in the Czech Republic, that she's a fabulous breeder. She's actually health testing her dogs and holding herself accountable. I really appreciate her. There are some breeders in Spain doing the same thing. But again, it's hard to compare when they don't have the same parameters we do. So most of the dogs that these breeders have, these people have been breeding, for maybe 2 years. They're all imports anyways. There are very few people. I'm just beginning to have my own lines after 8 years. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's a really difficult question because basically what you're getting are European dogs anyways from European breeding in the U.S. because they just haven't been here that long.
Right.
So, I mean, my oldest purebred Spanish Mastiffs are just going into their 5th year that I bred myself. So, it's a long, it's going to be a long journey, and it's going to be interesting to see if people actually step up to the plate and do the right thing by the dogs and they flourish here, or if they just become another, fad and then disappear. The best thing you can do, in my opinion, is the DNA testing in conjunction with the other, checking organ function and stuff. Because here's the thing, we don't know what they're going to throw yet because we haven't been breeding them long enough. Do you see what I mean? It's like, okay, so you get a dog and everything looks great, but we don't know what that dog genetically carries until you've bred them a couple of times, and see what they throw on different, with different dogs. So, that would be the biggest misconception. I mean, I've been the biggest offender of that. That's kind of how I learned, because I thought, great, clear and bark. That's awesome. Nobody has, everybody is testing out great and everything. Well, what happens if one of my puppies that's turning 5 all of a sudden drops dead of a heart attack? Then what do I do? You know what I mean? It hasn't happened yet, but it could.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, breeding is always going to be, it always has been. I'll go one further. Anything carbon-based that you're working with, and especially if you're trying to, replicate or breed it, you're going to get what you're going to get. It's chaos. You can't manipulate genetics and stuff, not the way people think they can. It's the same thing with people breeding all the pure and Anatolian crosses and saying, oh, you're getting the best of both worlds. No, you're not. How can, that doesn't even compute if you know anything about genetics. And trust me, I don't know as much as I'd like to. And I suppose I could study that for the rest of my life and still not know, because it's a huge gamble no matter what. So the biggest misconception is, guarantees. You think you're guaranteed something, and that is just about the time that Mother Nature is going to come in and say, oh, really? Well, here, how about this?
Mm-hmm.
It's just what it is. There are never going to be any answers that are going to be absolute. There's never going to be an absolute. It's just not going to happen. And it can't happen, as long as you're just working with something that can change, at any time, or has hidden, recessive genes that you don't know about until they show up. They raise their ugly heads, and there you have it. So it's always going to be a hit and miss. No matter what you do, there's no guarantees. I guess that's the best way to put it. It is. Yeah. You do your best, and the only thing you can do is stand behind your dogs. It's like if I have a guarantee, if something comes up, we'll work it out and figure it out from there. I'm not one of those people that says, oh, that's not my dog or whatever, because I need to know if it is my dog, that's causing it. So, yeah, you just have to be able to be open enough to actually work with people with this kind of stuff. And it's like, I actually even started a group on Facebook for breeders to post all of their results and stuff, so that people can see, exactly how where the dog stands. Unfortunately, I don't have any breeders wanting to be part of it. You gotta be honest about your dogs, or you're never gonna get anywhere. They're just gonna stay exactly the way they are, and that's the bottom line. And because we're working, on such unsteady ground, things are going to pop up, and it's better for them to pop up and find out about them than to stuff them down and hide them, and keep doing what you're doing.